Hello and welcome to Lost Love Mystery, where we explore the twists and turns of love, the pain of betrayal, and the mysteries that lie hidden in the heart. She thought she could humiliate me, walk away, and step into a better life. At first, it seemed like she had won, until reality hit. Now, she's alone, desperate, and trying to crawl back. But here's the twist. The room was dimly lit, a single lamp casting flickering shadows against the walls. Nathan sat on the couch, his fists clenched, his breathing slow but deep, controlled, restrained. Across from him, Olivia stared with an expression that was both smug and defiant. The argument had started over something small. It always did. A misplaced comment, a passive-aggressive sigh. But tonight, it had escalated faster than usual. "You know," Olivia said, her voice cutting through the air like a knife, "my ex always knew how to please me." Silence. Nathan didn't move. He didn't even blink. It took a second for his brain to register what she had just said. A slow burn started in his chest, spreading through his veins like wildfire. His jaw tightened. His knuckles whitened from how hard his hands clenched. She had said it with intention. There was no hesitation, no regret. She wanted to hurt him. She wanted to cut him open and watch him bleed. "You're joking," Nathan finally said, his voice eerily calm. Olivia shrugged. "Why would I be joking?" A humorless chuckle escaped his lips. "Because no woman with an ounce of self-preservation would say that to my face." Something flickered in Olivia's eyes, hesitation. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by arrogance. "Oh, don't be so dramatic." She leaned back against the couch, folding her arms. "You act like I said something unforgivable." Nathan's world shifted in that moment. The last remnants of patience, of love, of whatever tether had been holding him in place, snapped. Unforgivable? He could feel his pulse in his ears, hear the blood rushing through his veins like a storm ready to consume everything in its path. His body moved before his mind could stop him. The coffee table shattered as he kicked it aside, closing the space between them in an instant. Olivia's smug expression was wiped clean as he grabbed the lamp and hurled it across the room. The crash echoed through the house, glass shards raining down like deadly confetti. She flinched. "Good. You want to talk about unforgivable, Olivia?" His voice was low, dangerous. "Let's talk about that." Her breath hitched, but she quickly masked it with a roll of her eyes. "Oh, please. Throwing a tantrum like a child doesn't make you a man, Nathan." A slow smirk curled his lips. He knelt down, picking up a jagged piece of glass from the shattered lamp. Holding it between his fingers, he ran a thumb along the sharp edge, watching a thin line of blood appear. "You think I'm throwing a tantrum?" He chuckled darkly. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." Olivia shifted uncomfortably, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "You're pathetic," she spat. "Always so desperate to prove you're some alpha male. But the truth is, you were never enough for me. Never strong enough, never dominant enough." Nathan inhaled deeply, closing his eyes for a second. Enough. That was all he needed to hear. With a sudden, calculated movement, he flung the piece of glass across the room. It struck the wall just inches from Olivia's head, embedding itself deep into the plaster. She gasped, her body finally betraying her bravado. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. "I could destroy you," he whispered, voice laced with venom. "Do you understand that? I could make you beg for forgiveness. But I won't, because you aren't worth it." For the first time that night, fear flickered in her eyes. Nathan straightened, his pulse steady now, his mind clear. "You're nothing, Olivia. And in time, you'll realize just how replaceable you really are." Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving her sitting in the wreckage of her own arrogance. The silence between them was suffocating. The next morning, Olivia pretended as if nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen, poured herself coffee, and sat at the table, scrolling through her phone like a woman without a care in the world. Nathan watched her from across the room, his fingers tracing the rim of his untouched coffee cup. She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge the wreckage from the night before. She didn't even glance at the shards of broken glass still littering the floor. That was all he needed to know. Something inside him had already shifted the night before. Whatever love, whatever patience, whatever hope he had left for their marriage had died in that moment when she said those words. And now, all that was left was a void, a cold, unfeeling space where his devotion had once lived. He stood, grabbed his car keys, and walked out without saying a word. For days, he kept his distance. He no longer engaged in fights. He no longer attempted to fix what was already broken. The man Olivia had once known, the man who would have fought for her, who would have bent over backward to make her happy, was gone. And she felt it. At first, she acted indifferent, like she didn't care. If he didn't talk to her, she didn't talk to him. If he came home late, she didn't ask where he had been. But over time, she started to notice the difference. The way Nathan no longer looked at her. The way he moved through the house as if she wasn't there. The way he seemed free. That's when the real games began. She started dressing up, putting effort into her appearance like she was trying to remind him of the woman he had once fallen for. She left her phone in visible places, letting him see the messages from other men, attempts at making him jealous. But Nathan didn't take the bait. He just smirked, a cruel, knowing expression that made her skin crawl. One night, she came home later than usual. The scent of cheap cologne clung to her like a sickly perfume, the mark of another man. Nathan was sitting in the living room when she walked in, legs spread, one arm draped over the back of the couch, the picture of a man who had nothing left to lose. She hesitated. She had expected anger, jealousy, some kind of reaction. Instead, he simply raised an eyebrow. Have fun. His voice was calm. Too calm. She swallowed. I don't need your permission to live my life, Nathan. He chuckled, dark and hollow. No, you don't. And I don't need to pretend to give a damn anymore. Something in her confidence cracked. That night, she didn't sleep. Nathan could hear her tossing and turning in bed while he sat outside on the porch, watching the smoke curl from the cigarette between his fingers. She was losing him, and she knew it. A few days later, she finally said the words he had been waiting for. Maybe we should get a divorce. Nathan simply nodded. Okay. For the first time since she had uttered those cruel words, she looked truly shaken. She had expected resistance, maybe even a fight, but there was nothing. Just a cold, indifferent man who had finally seen her for what she was. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and division of assets. Nathan didn't argue. He didn't fight. He signed where he needed to, answered what was necessary, and let her take whatever she wanted, because none of it mattered anymore. When the day finally came for her to leave, she stood in the doorway, 2 suitcases at her feet. She was waiting for something, an emotional farewell, a last-minute confession of love, some sign that he still cared. But Nathan just stood there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She sighed, gripping the handle of her suitcase. I guess this is it. He smirked. I guess so. And with that, she walked out the door. Nathan stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway, listening to the silence she left behind. He expected to feel something. Anger, regret, sadness. But all he felt was relief. Months passed. Nathan didn't look back. He threw himself into his work, into his life, into rebuilding the pieces of himself that she had shattered. But Olivia? She had stepped into the life she had always wanted. The parties, the attention, the excitement. She posted pictures, flashing fake smiles, trying to prove to the world, and maybe to herself, that she had won. But real life isn't social media. Reality was harsher. The men she met weren't like Nathan. They weren't patient. They weren't devoted. They didn't tolerate her arrogance or entitlement. Some used her and left. Others didn't even bother pretending to care. And slowly, the cracks began to show. The party photos became less frequent. The updates stopped. The once vibrant woman who had walked out of Nathan's life with confidence and arrogance was now realizing the truth. She wasn't special. She wasn't irreplaceable. And no one was waiting for her. That's when the messages started. At first, they were subtle. A simple, hey, how have you been? Nathan ignored them. Then they became bolder. I was just thinking about you today. Silence. Then came the desperate ones. Do you ever miss me? And finally, the call. Nathan answered, just out of curiosity. The moment he heard her voice, he knew what was coming. I miss you, she whispered, her voice softer than he remembered. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. No, you don't. She let out a nervous laugh. I do. I was just thinking about how much we've been through. I know we had our issues, but you thought you could do better, he cut her off. Silence. She sighed. I feel like we gave up too fast. Nathan chuckled, low and dark. Too fast. She had been the one to throw away their marriage like it meant nothing. She had been the one to disrespect him, humiliate him, betray him. And now, She wanted to rewrite history. You didn't give up, he said coldly. You walked away. More silence. I don't want to fight, she said weakly. I just wanted to talk. Well, he said. We talked. And then, without hesitation, he hung up. The messages stopped after that. She had finally realized what Nathan had known all along. She thought she was walking into a better life. Instead, she walked straight into the cold, hard truth. She was alone. And Nathan? He was already too far ahead to care.